Hey, it's Patty again from Art Out of Anything, and today is Thursday, so that means a brand new video with a brand new art activity. Today we are going to be making some paper, and as some of you may be aware, paper making can run the gamut from kind of simple to super complicated. So today what we're going to do is something actually pretty simple, using existing paper you might already have and creating new kinds of paper. We're also going to be talking about 3 different words, vocabulary words: translucent, transparent, and opaque. So transparent, you can see through it, right? Translucent, you can kind of see through it. Light can shine through it, but you can't really make out what's behind things very easily. And opaque, which means you can't see through it at all, right? So those are our 3 words for today. So the first thing I did was I took one of these big gallon baggies, and you don't have to use a gallon, you can use whatever size you want, and I cut it up. So I cut up the sides, so I ended up with a flat baggie, right? So I actually ended up with 2. So I have 2 flat ones. You can also use plastic wrap, but I found that the baggies work really well because they're a lot sturdier and they lay flat nicely. So here's a great big one that I already had ready. And let me just show you what this finished product looks like so that you get an idea of what you're going to be making. So here's one example, and this is all tissue paper and Mod Podge. And you can see, I don't know if you can see, but there's a shiny side and a slightly less shiny, which is kind of a matte side. And that's what you'll get, by the way, when you finish this. Then we have this one, and I'll see if you can tell what kind of new paper I use. I use 2 different kinds of paper on here. And here's another one with some tissue paper as well. And now you'll notice that there's a difference in consistency. This one, very soft, doesn't make any sound really, and is almost rubbery to the touch, whereas this one sounds much more like paper, is a lot drier, not too shiny, and definitely not rubbery, also much easier to tear. And there's a reason for that, and I'm going to show you why. Okay, so I'm using 2 different materials. We have here decoupage glue, which is under the brand name of Mod Podge, which is what most people recognize it as. And decoupage glue is basically white glue with a little additive PVC that makes it kind of rubbery and really sticky. And it's used for decoupage, which is a collage technique, very popular during the Victorian era. And you can do that by gluing down paper onto surfaces like a wood box or a piece of paper or a canvas and creating that look. And we're going to kind of do that today, but then we're going to make our own paper. And I also have regular white glue that I got from the 99-cent store, nothing fancy. So the first technique I'm going to use is I mixed up some white glue with some water, kind of like a thin pancake mix. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint my glue on the surface of my plastic baggie, and I don't do the whole thing, I just do it piece by piece so that I can control where it's all going. The secret to all this is layering. Now I'm just using some pretty tissue paper that I had from a gift that I hold on to, and I don't know if anybody else does that, but I certainly do. And then I'm also using some of my own colored tissue paper to make my paper also. So as I lay down my pieces, they're going to stick onto the paper, onto the plastic, but I'm going to have to go over it again with my glue. And this is what I'm doing. What I'm doing is I am layering. I'm making layers of paper that will eventually stick together to create a new sheet of paper. Now there's lots of different ways you can do this. You can do random patterns by just laying colors on top of each other. And because the tissue paper especially is translucent, you're going to be able to see some of those colors underneath. So you can see how colors mix. This is parchment paper left over from my attempts at baking. And this is the first time I'm actually going to use parchment paper in here. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of effect I get and if it actually works. once we're done. So you can also use newspaper. Newspaper is really great because it has a great consistency. It's thin. It's, again, kind of translucent, actually. It's not completely opaque. If you hold it up to the light, you can see that. And it gives you the same effect as the tissue paper. Also, you can use paper towels also, although now you might not want to use up your paper towels, but you can. And that will also give you the same effect. So here I have a couple of layers built up already, and I would continue with that until I had at least 3 or 4 layers built up. Obviously, the more layers you have, the thicker your paper is going to be. So this was the result of using the glue and water, which, as I mentioned before, it's a little more like paper. It tears a lot easier, but it still holds up well together. This also took much longer to dry. This I left actually overnight, so it probably takes a good maybe like 4 or 5 hours to dry completely so that you can peel it off the paper. The next one I'm going to show you is the Mod Podge one, and that one, the decoupage glue, that one really does make a difference because that one really does come out a lot different. So I'm going to change this because I have another idea. As a way to extend this project, you can also create your own sort of stained glass pattern on the plastic baggie, and just remember to use a Sharpie or a permanent marker, because if you use a regular marker or a Crayola marker, it's going to come right off. So you want something that's going to stay on there so you have a guide, right? And there's also lots of other places online that you can get actual stained glass templates, like coloring books, that you can put underneath your baggie, and then you can just trace right over it. And this is a much more detailed, and obviously it takes a lot more time and a lot more practice. But what you can do is you can just put down your tissue paper in the shapes that you've created for your stained glass. Now you can do this all over your baggie like I did, so you can have a whole finished piece, or you can do it individually and then attach them together afterwards. You can also cut up little tiny pieces. Kids love cutting up little tiny pieces and gluing them on. I would not suggest making them into little balls like we do with other crafts that use tissue paper, because that's not going to work to make a flat sheet of paper. So I think you get the idea of what I'm talking about, of filling in almost like a coloring book. Instead of using crayons, you're using your paper. And now I'm going to peel one off for you. This was also done with a decoupage glue. As you can see, it's not quite dry yet because I just did it this morning, but it peels off super nice, and you have this very cool shape that's actually translucent because you can still see the light shining through it, and you can see all the different colors. And now the very best part of this, all of this, is what are you going to do with this paper? Well, you can actually draw on this paper. And again, you can use regular Crayola markers. I would use permanent markers, but you can draw on the paper and create your own design on it. You can cut it up and use it to make a new collage. You can hang it in your window and make a beautiful stained glass effect or sun catcher. So there's lots of different things. I'd like to see what you can do with it. I hope you liked today's video, and remember, I'll see you on Tuesday for a brand new project. Keep creating. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.